Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest, returning guest. His name is J.J. Dawson, and we've done many shows before. He comes to us from Australia. If you're watching on YouTube or Rockfin, you can see his excellent Substack. Highly recommended. I'll put a link to his Substack here. It's called jjdawson.substack.com. Covers a bunch of different topics, and we've covered a bunch of different topics talking together. We've come in. The last one was titled "No One Is Coming to Save You." We covered ESG. We talked about the COVID nightmare from the Australian perspective. And really, one of my most listened to and very important discussions was an article he did, which is the trans issue is not a petty culture issue. It's everything, which is really true. So you can go back and look at those. That was our first interview in March of 2023. But we've been wanting to talk about somebody in the news, somebody who's around, and an article that he wrote about Andrew Tate, Andrew Tate, who we were talking in the pre-show, is known as the most Googled man in the world. It's hard to believe this guy is such a kind of cultural figure. And I have some slides, and JJ has a video he wants to play, but we can get more into that. So JJ Dawson, welcome back to the show.
Hey, William, thanks for having me back. And hello out there to everyone from wherever you're listening around the world. It's 10 a.m. here in Melbourne. But yeah, great to be back.
Awesome. So you've been writing, you are a very prolific writer, but talk about what led you to Tim Tate and why do you think he's a person of note? I mean, he's been interviewed here. I don't know if you've seen it, but like most major alt media figures have interviewed him. It was Candace Owens. There was Patrick Bet-David of Valuetainment interviewed him. Tucker Carlson, Alex Jones, who like really had almost an adoration kind of interview. Like it was very odd, but they have gone out of their way to interview this figure who made his money on streaming, beautiful women. So
cam girl prostitution.
Yeah.
He's a divisive figure. And he also did that interview with Piers Morgan, which was I guess more of a mainstream channel. But I guess the reason I got interested in Tate was, it was a couple of years ago now. He appeared on James Dellingpole's podcast, and I'd actually love to get you two together. You need to talk to James Dellingpole at some time. We need to set that up. But that's when I first heard of him, and he sort of anyone who's familiar with Andrew Tate will know his style. It's a hyper bombastic, masculine rhetoric. It's I guess if you were to take Jordan Peterson and like, I don't know, pump him full of steroids and get him on crack or something, that's kind of what Andrew Tate is like. It's like clean your room on steroids. At the time I was sort of halfway down the rabbit hole and sort of uncovering things about the world and starting to understand the way the whole system works. And a lot of what Tate says really resonates with the worldview that you and I and many others share, that the whole thing is controlled by an elite of bankers and big businessmen and NGO types who hang around at the World Economic Forum. And that's what drew me to him initially. I suppose what got me caught up in the Tate thing was his, I guess, the message he directs at young men. And he really did fill a void, I think. When Jordan Peterson dropped off the map, when he ran into his problems and got hooked on Xanax and had to, drop off the map and go into detox in Russia for 2 years or whatever it is that he did. Yeah. I sort of feel like Tate filled that void, but he stepped it up a level, and in many ways he probably poached many of the lost young men who Jordan Peterson was speaking to, and kind of filled them with this new vision, this new drive, and his whole message really is be strong, be powerful, be perhaps even be violent, maybe not physically, but, violent in your thinking, like get aggressive, make yourself the best thing you can be. And that's really, I think, really attractive, to young men who, I've said in my writing, we've spent the last few decades emasculating our boys and young men, So I got caught up in that for a bit, and it sort of wasn't until I subscribed to his email list and started receiving his emails, and I kind of when you're getting an email from someone each day calling you a loser and saying, you got to be more like me. You've got to, you're never going to be anything unless you do what I say and join my private members club and give me some of your money. It's kind of like, that was at the point that I cut him off, and I unsubscribed from his email list. And it's kind of like, look, I'm not a loser. I know who I am. I'm cool with God. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I don't need your approval, dude. And around the same time, you did a great episode with Roberta Glass, and you discussed the current allegations against him, which he's facing in Romania, for which, anyone who doesn't know, he was arrested, I think, back in December last year. He spent about 3 months in jail with his brother Tristan, without having been charged with anything, mind you. But the ostensible allegation is sex trafficking. And, then around the same time he converted to Islam, which, for me as a Christian is somewhat problematic. But when he does speak about God, he does make a lot of sense, and it's almost like he takes a kind of a non-denominational view. But, so I'm kind of on the fence about Tate at this point. Long story short, I find a lot to like in his message, but I find him a hypocrite, to be honest, because he made his money off preying on the very same men who he claims now to be helping to save. Like, the lost young incel generation, right? It's like, I want to help you. I want to help you rise up and be the man you were meant to be. But how he got rich was by scamming these very same people for money through camgirl prostitution. So that, for me, immediately is kind of like, well, okay, you're a hypocrite, dude. And I don't feel he's ever properly addressed that particular issue. So I don't know. I'll hand it back to you for a second.
Well, they don't really ask him those kind of delicate questions, is what I've found. I was listening to some of those.
Yeah.
And some of the abuse and the psychological tricks he plays. Like, I don't think I wouldn't call him genius level, but he's not dumb. Like, I think he knows the psychological games. He understands how to control the women, how to extract value, how to put people where he's in the higher position on the pedestal, whether it's men or women. Yep. So I think as a kind of an influencer / narcissistic guru, he's doing a great job. Like, he's got these young kids copy him. He's got almost like he's the gang leader, and he's got this posse retinue of guys doing the same thing. So it's something remarkable. And I suppose in every generation, there's always going to be these men who are going to try to fit into what that generation's ideal is. Maybe Hugh Hefner would be an example. Like, he's a player, so I see him in that same mold.
Yeah,
but
the player,
also,
the boss,
the player, the boss.
He calls himself Top G.
Top G. He flashes all his cars.
Yeah,
he's muscular. So I think that in that regard, I got to give him credit. What I don't give him credit for is kind of what he's leaving. I mean, he's kind of plays chess, so he has some kind of intellectual pursuits.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in there for a minute, I got in my notes here actually. You mentioned before, like he's a clever guy, right? He's kind of smart, but I've spent quite a bit of time thinking, what's the guy's actual IQ? How smart is this guy? And look, I mean, we're both intelligent people. I think most of the people who listen to this podcast probably have an IQ, in excess of, well above 100. Let's put it that way. And you do have to wonder about Tate, because I do find him a bit basic. I find him boorish. But the chess thing, his father was a grandmaster. His father was also in the CIA, which we can get onto in a bit. But I wonder about guys like him. It's like, I hate trying to put myself on an intellectual pedestal, but if I may quote Tony Soprano here for one moment, I got an IQ of 136. It's been tested. It's fellas, people like us and people who listen to this podcast, we're above average because, we like to get to the bottom of things. We like to think deeply. Now, I'm not saying Tate is a dumbass or anything, and he's got some incredibly onto it takes on things, but
he kind of has the alt media perspective down. He's the one going for freedom and understanding, and then there's Matrix forces out to get him. That's very cultish kind of behavior, like us against them.
Yeah, and I wonder with guys like that, is it more cunning than intelligence? Because there is a difference between intelligence and cunning. And I've met a few guys in my life who've been very good chess players. And the chess thing's interesting to me because his father was a grandmaster. Apparently, Tate's played a bit of chess. And it seems to fit with his, the way he rolls. It's very tactical, very strategic. He can see 5 steps ahead and he knows what moves he has to make to win, right? I don't know if that's intelligence, though. I think that's cunning. I think it's, you can get into psychopathy and narcissism and Machiavellianism, the dark triad thing.
Right.
That's one way that I think about him. But then a lot of the stuff he says is, it's right on the mark with everything you and I and pretty much everyone else in the counter-hegemonic resistance believes and thinks. I don't think he's an unintelligent man, but I think there's a level of cunning there, which can, I think, lead towards, potentially mistreating people. And yeah, like you said, the whole guru thing, the messiah thing, like I don't want to be part of anyone's club. I'm not going to be a follower. I'm never going to be a follower. And that's why I unsubscribed from his email list,
Right. And it's almost like you're going to be on the in group, right? So he has different tiers. So you can be on the email, and then you can pay, and you can go to the PhD, and then there's like the
gold status, platinum status, get private members war room. Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like a multi-level marketing thing. It's like structure.
Yeah.
That's why I titled this "The Temptation of Man," because to me, Tate is like the person, the kind of narcissistic guru who holds those things out to men who are becoming. You move through puberty to be a teen, and you're trying to find your ideal. And here's this guy saying, I got women, I got cars, I got money, and so those things are like maybe like the kind of not the greatest example of what the status is for a man, right? It's like all the flashy baubles of being a man, but there's more to it than that, So
I completely agree, man. And there was a time, and we've discussed this before, when I was obsessed by money and status, and I was actually discussing this with my ex-girlfriend last night. That's a whole nother story. But it does seem, our entire society is obsessed with status and money,
Right. No.
and Tate claims to be trying to help people sort of, I don't know, there's just there's an incongruency in his messaging which troubles me. On the one hand, he's criticizing the big banks and the elites who run the world, and I got to give him his due. He's got what, $600 million maybe at a guess.
Is that what they're saying his numbers? I don't even know. Is that really?
Well,
is that verified?
I don't know. He's not a billionaire yet, but he's got a lot of money, right? And I do he's not. What I do find interesting is you can get a guy who's got that much money who can come out and say, hey, look, there's a whole other level above me, which completely dwarfs whatever I have. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand, especially as the war against the middle class continues to rage, and they try to divide us along these working middle class lines. It's, I've often said to, people who post memes and stuff about, the problem is the landlords. The problem is, the problem is people earning $150,000 aren't getting taxed enough. And I'm like, you don't understand. Like, you and I have a lot more in common than the people who actually run this stuff, So I think it is important to note that a guy like Tate, regardless of his riches, he's not actually part of the club. He's not.
No way.
He's not top tier, and I got to give him his due in that regard. But what's happening to him? I suppose where the point of inflection comes for me is what's happening to him currently reeks to me of an establishment stitch up. Now, you and Roberta discussed the allegations against him, and you had a good discussion. And, I'll be the first to admit that he may well have engaged in illegal activities, and,
there's rape allegation, like it's rape. Yeah, I've heard Owen Benjamin said he raped Laura Southern, who was kind of like a rape wing.
Lauren Southern, I hadn't.
Yeah, that was Owen Benjamin. So that's all I know. But yeah, so those are pretty serious. Yeah, there's 4 allegations in the UK, and there's actually a law firm trying to raise money to sue them. I don't know if they ever raised the money, but that was it. That's the truth.
Yeah, and it's difficult in these situations, and as I wrote in my article, which you have pulled up right now, the Andrew Tate Conundrum, Marianne Finch, who's a super skeptical commentator out of the UK, her take is that Tate is part of the operation. He's part of the psyop, and and you never hear someone's name in the news unless they're part of the club.
Right. I'm slightly. If you have the most Googled thing, it would not surprise me at all, especially when you see these people, like the eyeballs of the kind of movement of the smarter people are moving off of TV, cable, and going into podcasting or this format. So it would be no surprise to me at all that Tate is positioning himself, or his handler or whoever, positioning himself in that space, much like Tucker Carlson is doing.
Well, Tucker is another great example, and for years I've been struggling with Tucker. When I first went down the rabbit hole, I loved him, and I watched him nightly, and again, like Tate, he's got a lot of great takes, but then you got to wonder,
Voice of America. His dad is a freaking agent of some sort, man. He's definitely part of the state, yeah.
Yeah, Tucker's dad was in the State Department, wasn't he?
Yeah. But he was involved in kind of like American propagandizing through radio back in the day. So I think that the Voice of America was the CIA cutout or something like that. It was an intel cutout, yeah.
And we would be fools to think that the apple does not fall too far from the tree.
When you see these kids end up at Yale Law School like that, like Tucker and Hunter Biden, who I can't imagine that he had the chops to actually make it through there. But you see the strings being pulled for the benefit of these kids that may not have been the apex of their academic and high school career. So makes you wonder.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I guess for guys like us, the question, always the eternal question, is how deep does the psyop go?
Right.
And
really true. Yeah.
And I did a piece called "Going Down the Rabbit Hole" on my Substack, jjdawson.substack.com, in which I sort of discussed this conundrum that we face. And there comes a point where you simply have to say, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, and you got to get comfortable with the imperfection of your knowledge. And there it is. Tate's dad was in the CIA, and so there is a red flag there.
No doubt.
However, as with the current charges leveled against him, what one swallow does not a summer make. There are coincidences, and there are some conspiracy theories which do test the bounds of plausibility. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the correct one, and this is why I say I'm on the fence. It's possible to I find Tate distasteful. I don't like the way he made his money. I don't like his hypocrisy. I got an email from him one morning calling me a loser, and I was unsubscribed. Right.
Has anybody ever researched the men who have given their money $10,000 or their, house over to him or to these women? Has anybody really done that work? They've tried to get into his cadre of females, camsters or whatever, but some of those guys get worked for 5-6 figures, real money. It's not a joke.
He's got an operation going, right, and he's hardly alone in this. There are many people who are doing this kind of multi-tier kind of, pay this much, you get something, pay a little bit more, you get, pay me lots of money and you become part of the elite. And, some people do it on a fairly benign basis. Tim Pool's got a similar operation, and we've spoken about him before, and I've got my reservations about him too. But I think, Tate is sort of the ultimate manifestation of, as you were saying, of that guru, hyper-masculine. And I think it's a real shame Jordan Peterson dropped off the map when he did, because he really was the first guy who properly woke me up and made me start getting my life together. When I first started listening to him, I was going through a horrible divorce. I was drinking too much. I was almost at rock bottom, and there was just a couple of segments from him, along. Look, the funny thing is, his message is essentially the same as Tate's.
I was just going to say that, be dangerous.
Pick up your suffering and bear it. Which it's sort of, but it's just like Tate. Peterson sort of originally, at least, approached it from a kind of, I would say, quite a humble perspective. It's like accept the imperfection and the tragedy of your being, and bear your suffering, and try to make the world a better place. Whereas Tate is kind of like, embrace the God that you are, and elevate yourself and become a glorious, powerful being, which essentially the same message, but manifesting in two very different ways.
Without the flash, Tate has the flash, and I would say Peterson is more of exhibiting the moral character much more so. I don't know what his real background is, his religious outlook, but
Peterson, yeah.
Is he a Christian? I don't even know. I should.
Well, I
feel like we mentioned that. Yeah.
I caught a podcast with him recently, and it does sound like he's teetering on the brink of just sort of falling over into saying, yes, I believe in God, I'm a Christian, but
Okay.
he sort of he reserves the right to say, well, I don't know, I act as if God exists.
Gotcha.
That's what he says, which I'm
There
cool
is
with.
a connection between Peterson and Tate because Peterson's daughter dated Tate for some moment. You
Are
ever
you
heard
kidding
that?
me?
No, I'm not
Michaela.
kidding you. Yeah.
Michaela dated Andrew Tate.
Yes. There's a picture of them together.
Dude.
Yeah. So that's also kind of strange, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, we could go down the rabbit hole on that, but
Look at this. Here's the pictures. Here's the evidence.
okay. Yeah.
I don't know how long they dated for or whatever. I don't know.
But they were actually dating. That's legit, is it?
There's no question. Let's see. Let me see if I can find a better picture. These don't want to come up. I don't know. The Brave browser, it doesn't work very well. Let me see if I can find a better browser. I mean, the Brave search engine. But yeah, so that's an interesting connection. So there is a void, like you mentioned, the void. So there's a void out there for men. They're not getting these things through public schools or anything. That maybe private schools, like how to be a man or act like a man. So these are the different ones. Like Tate is the toxic version of Peterson or something, because he also emphasizes, you got to have these women under your thumb. You can't let them dominate you or whatever. And that's my take on Andrew Tate. There's videos of him kind of roughing some ladies up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. There's one. I have to go back and find it.
Physically.
Yeah. Physical video. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen that. And I admit in my article, The Andrew Tate Conundrum, that, I haven't reviewed the text messages, but I do point out that it's completely possible to fabricate, some of those things, yeah, a digital trail like that in this day and age. But I did look at some of them, and as I point out in my article, there is a gray area between manipulation and violent coercion. So, yeah. I maintain, my position is I'm not sure I could be friends with a guy like that. I'm not. There he is. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure I would enjoy hanging out with him. He strikes me as a domineering alpha who. I think he gathers people to him who want to be subservient, which again is incongruent with his message of kind of brotherhood and solidarity. Because as I said before, I don't want to be part of anyone's club. I'm not interested. I serve God, and there is no human. It's. I don't care if it's Tate or Klaus Schwab. I'm not going to serve any other human ever, So, but at the same time, I won't, I won't condemn a man without hard evidence. And the Rolling Stone article, which you and Roberta discussed, it certainly does throw up some questions. However, they don't actually provide any evidence. They don't even link to any of the text messages. They even admit in the article that the latest victim herself, completely denies the charges, and indeed the two previous victims upon whom his arrest and imprisonment was predicated last December also completely deny that they were ever forced into sex work. And instead, the Romanian authorities relied on the expert opinion of a psychologist, and we all know how much we trust experts these days.
I can get an expert to say the moon is green cheese. I pay for anything. I've seen just the most joke experts ever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and so what the psychologist said was, well, he determined that the victims were brainwashed and they didn't know what they were saying, and so the court accepted that. And upon that, I think that was the expert testimony upon which the imprisonment hinged. so off the bat, to me, that's kind of not cool. That's not what we understand justice. That's not the way we understand justice to work in the West. That said, he is living in a corrupt former Soviet bloc state. Right. However, we must keep in mind that Romania is desperately trying to ingratiate itself with the European Union, which, as we all know, is one of the engine rooms of progressive globalism. Right. So I mean, I don't view the authorities and the Romanian establishment any differently than I view, the current US establishment, the EU establishment, the a-holes who run Australia and New Zealand. I think they're all part of the same club. They all take money from the same people. They're all subservient to the Bank of International Settlements and the rest. So as a puppet state of the EU, I'm disinclined to believe that what the Romanian authorities are doing to Andrew Tate is motivated by pure benevolence and a desire to set things right. And let's not forget that this same global establishment who are crusading against Andrew Tate on sex trafficking charges completely buried the Ghislaine Maxwell story.
Right. Good point. Yeah, that was the all public journalism. The exposure of Epstein and all that was all public journalism. It did not make it out in the corporate media. It's really incredible.
So we have a woman who has been convicted in a court of law for child sex trafficking to no one. Right. She trafficked children for sex to no one, which simply is not possible. So we all know that they bumped off Epstein because he was too much of a liability. Whatever conversations happened with Ghislaine subsequent to that, we don't know. But it's evident that she was incentivized to keep her mouth shut, and Lord knows what happens to her down the line. But it's like they threw her under the bus. She was the sacrificial lamb. But the upshot of that whole thing was, okay, where's the client list?
No doubt.
Right?
No doubt.
Yeah.
We know some of the names, like what was her name? It was what's the girl who sued her? That's why she went to jail. The girl from Australia,
Giffrey, Virginia Giffrey. Yeah.
Right.
And I watched that.
She named names. She named a lot of names.
Yeah. And you know what? Look, we're all smart people here, and anyone who's seen that testimony, and it's not just her. There's like five. There's a great documentary about it, which was on Netflix a while back, I think. But it was compelling. It's. I like to think I can tell when someone's BSing. Right. And you never know. But I found that entire testimony from the various witnesses who've come out against Maxwell and Epstein very compelling. And it has been buried, and it's been completely shunted aside, and we're constantly being distracted now by. I mean, something barely stays in the news cycle for 6 weeks these days. What happened to Ukraine?
Right, it's gone. Incredible. The whole war could be stripped off the face of the media. I mean, it's really interesting to watch, as somebody who does not watch or consume any corporate media, how the stages get set into a news sequence so fast, just like that. Like, okay, we're on to something else.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously colluded. There's just total collusion amongst all these things by some deep state entity, Mockingbird type entity. There's no question.
Yeah. So my question is, why is this global establishment, which completely buried the Ghislaine Maxwell client list, why do they suddenly care about exposing Andrew Tate's crimes? Which, even if they are true, I would argue sort of pale in comparison to the operation that Maxwell and Epstein had going on.
No question. It wasn't just the sex trafficking; it was for blackmail. They were putting people under their thumb. Do you ever hear the story of George Mitchell? He was a senator here.
Yeah.
But it was Virginia Giuffre said she was sent to Mitchell to, do the deed with him.
Yep.
And guess what happens to Mitchell down the line? He becomes the arbitrator. I mean, this is in the news. The arbitrator for the Israeli-Palestine negotiations back in 2008. No, it's off the charts. There's a picture of him with the head of the PLO, Abbas, and Netanyahu, and Hillary Clinton, and Netanyahu's smiling like a wolf. And that nothing came of all that. I mean, it's incredible. And that was George Mitchell. That's why they can't look into these guys, because it would compromise the whole operation and all the operations. They wanted these guys compromised. This is full compromise. I was actually talking about that earlier today. Let me see if I can find that picture. They've probably taken it down. There it is. So this is after he did the dirty deed with Virginia Giuffre.
Yeah.
This is the negotiation.
Yeah,
Boss,
there he is. Yeah.
A special envoy for Middle East peace. We've got this guy under our thumb. We own him. He had sex with an underage girl. It's all there. They all share a laugh. This is all funny. The inside jokes on this have to just be delicious for Hillary Clinton and Netanyahu. The boss probably doesn't know anything, but yeah, he's going to do everything we say. And what came of this, right?
Nothing.
The Israelis came out on top.
Yeah, well, yeah, as always.
Yeah. That's one. JJ, that's just one of probably thousands of things that have happened where people were turned and forced to do all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we are dealing with a satanic pedophile cult, as far as I'm concerned, and people can call me whatever names they want. I no longer care. I do believe that's what we're up against. And whether or not Tate is sort of part of some revolting kind of sex trafficking operation, which I have my doubts about. I don't think it's on that level, So I mean, look, if it can be proven that he has trafficked women and enslaved them and forced them into prostitution, then I'll condemn him with the rest, because there comes a point where it's like evil is evil.
Well, how much do you know what his scrape was? Like a pimp, if a prostitute is with a pimp, the pimp is hungry for their money. They take all the money and give back what they want. Do you know if that was the same thing with Tate? I don't know.
Well, I mean, what I keep coming back to, and this is why I say I find him distasteful, but is that, manipulating someone into doing something isn't technically illegal. I mean, it's a gray area, right? So, I mean, we can talk about the morality of it all day long. And this is why I titled my article "The Andrew Tate Conundrum," because it is a conundrum.
Yes, yeah.
He does have some incredibly powerful messages, and he has filled a void, like you just said before. However, there is this incredibly distasteful side to what he does, and as a Christian, I find his embrace of Islam problematic. But I mean, that's not even a particular problem for me. It's more the hypocrisy of the way he made his money.
Right. It fits into his persona, though. The very male Islam. The woman is basically like a indentured servant or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's very convenient, isn't it? It's almost like a get out of jail free card for him now, isn't it? It's like, well,
I'm Muslim. Yeah, that's what we do.
That's what the Prophet instructs.
Yeah, the Prophet had Aisha, so what's wrong with a 15-year-old? Right? I mean, that's the rationale. I mean, Muslim culture is very different than Christian culture. It's very different.
It is, and I've got my problems with it, not least the fact that they're filling Europe and the UK with young Muslim men. And I mentioned this.
And the US, they're here now, baby.
Yeah. Well, they're bringing them over there now as well. It's a bit further for them to go, but I mean, I keep saying to people, it won't be long before they're here, before they start shipping them down here as well.
They'll be in Australia too, no question. No question.
And in fact, I heard from what's her name? Oh, the woman who got imprisoned here from God, what is her name? Monica Schmidt. Monica Schmidt.
Huh.
I heard her report recently, or it might have been Rebecca Barnett, who's another Substack writer I follow. But apparently, Australia is held up as this sort of paradigm of protectionism as far as immigration is concerned. But apparently, we've taken in 500,000, or we're planning to take in 500,000 under the new government.
500,000 what? From where?
Well, from the third world, which it's Africa, the Middle East, basically all the places that have been decimated by Western imperialism. Which again, again, this is what I find so difficult with Tate. He's got some great takes, and
what's his take on like mass migration?
Well, I'll tell you, his take is that, and he's not alone in this, that it's reverse colonialism. Right. So to summarize it, I think what he said was the globalists, the elite had no problem decimating Africa to enrich Europe, but by the same token, they've got no problem decimating Europe to enrich Africa. So his position is, they move the money around wherever they need it. They exploit one situation. It's like a seesaw. And the clip that I was hoping to play kind of touches on that. Maybe we should play that now.
Okay, let me see if I can pull that up. Let's see. Let me set up the volume right here. Hold on. Settings, audio. Okay. Go ahead and play it. Can you play it?
That one there?
Hit the play button on yours.
On my browser.
JJ?
On here?
Doesn't matter. We don't know who's in charge. We don't know who's in charge. We don't know where they are. They're not going to be anywhere near the trouble. That's for fucking sure. They're going to be somewhere else. Oops. Oh, well.
I can't hear it. Crap.
You can't hear it.
Unmute. Try it again. Let me see if I can find it.
You want me to play it in the browser? I'll flick you the link in the chat. Yeah?
Oh, that's not it.
Unmute screen volume.
Well, I can't find it. I don't think it's going to work.
Okay. Basically,
you have to like do it with like you have to upload it and everything. It's a real pain in the butt. It just doesn't work on stream.
Stream this to
you have
audience?
to have an actual file.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
basically,
there's something when you start the stream, and then you move from your AirPod to the speakers. It doesn't flip back on my computer very easily. So that's really what the problem is. So it's not going to happen. But people can go to JJ Dawson's Twitter and listen to it. And the title for people in audio is Andrew Tate, The People Who Run the World Don't Care About the Economy. So you can check that out. He posted it June 15th, 2023. So
yeah, anyway, all the links are in my article, The Andrew Tate Conundrum. But basically what he says, the people who run the world don't care about the economy, that was part of the Patrick Bet-David interview in which he also said, he talked about reverse colonialism. They had no problem in the 19th and 20th century immiserating the third world to enrich Europe. That's run its course. The bubble's about to burst, and now they have no problem immiserating Europe and the West to enrich the third world. It's going to happen
again, yeah. Oh, yeah. Wait till those people start gaining political power and do everything. It's going to be a freaking nightmare. Like here, they have the Squad. It's just like a totally different culture. It's not American culture. It's something different. It's unfortunate. JJ, we're at the 45-minute mark. I mean, how do you want to wrap this up? Do you want to add anything or anything I missed?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the closing point for me is the jury is still out for me on Andrew Tate. much in the same way as the jury is out for me on Elon Musk, or name the luminary inside the so-called freedom movement. Because there are many high-profile figures on our side of the debate who are very contentious. Whether it's Elon, whether it's Tate, whether it's Tucker, whether it's Tim Pool, there are always accusations of controlled opposition. There are always smear campaigns. There's always dirt. There's always muck.
Right. It's par for the course, man. It's amazing.
Par for the course. And as I said in the piece you've got pulled up right there, going down the rabbit hole, there comes a point where you just have to say, I don't know. We are the common people. You and me and all of our listeners, we are the great unwashed, the salt of the earth, and we're never going to know the whole truth, right? So there has to come a point where you get comfortable with that. So the jury is out for me. I'm reserving my judgment. I want to see hard proof that Tate's guilty, and if he is, I'll condemn him with Epstein and Maxwell.
Well, it's just like Brand, right? Like that was a hit piece, but there's no in-court proof. Somebody said they didn't name their name. He's a rapist. He did this bad thing. I mean, the guy was like a freaking Lothario. So, I mean. Yep.
And Russell Brand is another great example.
Right.
The jury's out for me on him too. And Marianne Finch did a hit piece on him as well, the rebranding of Russell Brand, which you can find on YouTube. And it's interesting. You've got to listen to all this stuff, and you got to consider all the facets. But I think the last chat we had was referencing my article, "No One Is Coming to Save Us," and I go back to that. We got to stick together. It's us against the world. No one's coming to save us, and we can't put our faith in gurus and macho men and strong men. Whether it's Trump, whether it's Bobby Kennedy,
Musk.
whether it's Musk, whether it's Tate, we can't trust these guys. Maybe they're on our side, maybe they're not. However, what I will say is Tate does have some extremely powerful messages. Please do go to my article on jjdawson.substack.com, The Andrew Tate Conundrum. Take a look at, there's about half a dozen clips there that I, on my Twitter that I reference from him. And these are some of his better takes from the past few months. There's a few there from the Patrick Bet-David interview. There's a few there from the Alex Jones interview. He does have an incredibly powerful message, and virtually everything he says is true. And this is the conundrum I have. His take on he's got a great
Just look at his takes. Guys, go to JJ Dawson's Substack and check it out. I got to run, but the best place to see and talk and reach out to you is through your Substack too, right, JJ Dawson?
I just want to say one more thing, William, and this is the wrap. This is the wrap. Okay. Andrew Tate is the reaction to a feminized society, and we have spent the last 3 or 4 decades emasculating our boys and our young men. We've created a gynocentric, matriarchal society. You can read more about that in my piece, FIFA Women's World Cup, hijacked by fourth wave feminism. And it would appear to me that when you push a narrative that far, when you test a culture that has been built around resilience, self-responsibility, and striving to be the best you can be, when you feminize that with these ideas of kindness and empathy and inclusion, and I'm not trying to be misogynistic here. Masculinity and femininity have always balanced each other out, and that is the point of marriage. That's the point of child rearing. That's the yin and the yang. However, when you take it too far in one direction, you're going to get a snapback in the opposite direction. Right. We've over-feminized society, and my closing remark is that when you do that to a society, that a guy like Andrew Tate is simply the stark and inevitable result.
Amen. JJ, thanks so much for your time. Great talk. Come back anytime. Open invitation. Thank you so much. I got to run. Thanks for listening, everybody. Take care. And go to jjdawson.substack.com and check them out. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. I actually really